welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to what is really one of my favorite parts of the entire year. And that's because we get to talk about what I think has become one of the central institutions for students interested in the tech space here at Penn, among JD students. And that's because we've created something I think is pretty unusual and pretty different from what you see in other journals, both here at Penn and other places, and that's the Journal of Law and Innovation. And so we'll talk to you somewhat about the substantive component to it, but you'll hear from the two editors-in-chief who are actually leading the journal this year, but you'll also hear from 3 students. Because there's beyond the nuts and bolts, the curricular and the educational experience, it has also become, so what we always hoped it would become, and it has become, sort of a central gathering place and a social dimension of people interested in the space, where they come together, they do activities together, they work together, and it becomes a way that I think that students really becomes part of one of the seminal experiences. And that is something as an instructor you always hope for, but you can never, it's like, I always think about when I was a student leader, I used to do mentorship programs. You hope that they gel, but you just never really know. I mean, it's just, people are different. And what's been amazing to me is how this journal has reinvented, and what you'll learn with student organizations, particularly upper level ones, institutional memory is exactly 1 year, right? Because you have the 2 L's and the 3 L's. And I've been grateful to the student leaders who've done this every year because they've essentially reconstructed and perpetuated what I think has been a really, really special experience. So that's all the preliminaries, but this is something we're doing now, just to get the details, because you're probably wondering, what is the Journal of Law and Innovation? So the Journal of Law and Innovation is unlike any other journals here. So unlike if you apply for another journal, you go through this writing competition right after graduation. You get assigned, you decide that you qualify for a journal, you get invited to do one, you decide whether or not. And then you work largely autonomously of faculty. There's a nominal faculty advisor for every journal, but basically, I've been that person once, and I don't think I spoke with the students once the entire year. That's just sort of the way it's and that's student organizations, that's fine. I mean, if students they're supposed to run their organizations however they want. This one's very different. It's really done closely, in close contact with faculty, and it has a subject matter focus. Unlike a journal where you just take sort of whatever gets submitted and it goes, each year has a theme and is taught as a seminar, a 3-credit seminar in the fall. And it will vary every year based on this particular subject matter, and particular faculty leading it. It rotates among different faculty, although as things have worked out, I've done it the last 3 years, and I think I'm going to do it next year as well. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave up to you. But it's really I think that the experience of a focused seminar becomes a way that it's not just, you see, I'll do an article on this or that, you actually get to focus on subject matter. And then in the spring, in January, we do a conference, a symposium, which we just had. I know some of you were there, I know that the staff members were there, on AI governance. And then after that, we edit, in the spring, is ungraded credits for actually editing the volume. And so you have a combination of a classroom experience, really in close contact with faculty members, and then a traditional journal editing experience. And of course, in the fall, we do some training, so you're not just thrown on it in January to get things going, so you actually understand what's expected of you and get some practice in how that's all supposed to work out. The other thing that's really nice about this is we really depend in the symposium on the students having primary interaction with the faculty that are participating in the symposium. We also have opportunities, we have commentators, we typically have a pretty good community of scholars comes together. And that's a really nice experience. There's a dinner and all that, so bring socially. And that's really, really nice. Now, the other thing about this is because it's graded as a class, taught as a class, many members of this journal are also members of other journals as well. So the other journals are taught on a co-curricular basis, and there is work involved in journals. But because it's taught as a class, that's 1 fewer class you take in the fall and the spring. And the design of the program is that, first, the regular journal competition only leads 1 membership, you can do 2 this way. And a certain number, many of our students, this is all they want to do, they just do 1. But many other students actually do 2, and it's completely up to you. And you can have that sort of experience as well, and it's one of the nice things I think that's open to it that's, I think, unique about this experience. But what's also interesting is, in addition to, and I won't talk a lot about it because we have the student leaders to talk about this, in addition to the actual classroom component, we actually support some additional sort of social engagements for the students. We'll do a happy hour with CTIC faculty in the fall, so you get to know people who are the faculty who are interested in a more casual environment. And then the EICs organize at least one social event through the course of the year, so that staff gets to know each other. To me, one of the great things also, as you're 2L then, you get contact with the 3Ls, there's all these other things that you're gonna go through in terms of your job search, in terms of clerkship, something. I actually think having contact with upper level students is just fantastic. It's a critical success factor, because guess what? They were you not that long ago. And so they've been through the exact same thing, and as you go through the whole journal process, that's fine. I think that's one of the great supports, all right? So that's what that is. So what I would say then is, just to give you a sampling of the topics we've done in the past. This year was AI governance, but in other years we've done a wide variety of topics depending on what it was, and also certainly the times. Professor Wagner, when he taught it, did innovation in a time of crisis, that being COVID, being singularly appropriate, because it was during the COVID year when all of us were going through that thing that I don't think we'll ever be able to explain to anyone else in a way that they'll understand, because it was just so weird. But we've done space, we've done competition law on big tech, we've done all these different things. And I hesitate to, people have asked me, usually at this point, they ask what the topic is for the next year. I've usually not been in a position to do it because I didn't know for sure who's going to lead it. And reserving the right to change. First, I would say, I would like to think that regardless of what it is, you'd be interested, because like when we did smart contracts with Tess Wilkinson, Ryan, and David Hoffman, I don't think that's what everyone expected, but I think they got a lot out of it. And I will tell you, in addition, a certain number of the 2Ls, not all of them choose to be on the board as 3Ls. And if you're on the board or maintain editing responsibilities, you are welcome to take the seminar again, because there will be a different subject matter. It's not like it's gonna, you're taking torts the second time. It'll be a radically different thing. At the risk of tying myself to the mast, I believe that the topic for next year is going to be robotics and cybernetics. And it's one of these areas of law that is actually, as it turns out, quite different from AI, and in fact is a critical success factor and an increasing thing we're doing. It's related to all the things we're doing in terms of machine learning, but there is a dimension to it that's quite different. And so, and there's an interesting, robust literature on this on the tech side, which I think is going to be an interesting dimension that will come up. So I say that at some risk, because some people say, great, some people say that's not what I want. But I think that it's another area where we're going to, one of the things I love about it, is your chance not to get spoon-fed 100-year-old state Supreme Court cases. In a way, it's really, if you wanted me to tell you what the answers are in cybernetics, the answer is we don't know. But what we do, the way lawyers live, is we learn tools for analyzing, we teach you to fish instead of giving you fish. We give you frameworks that's going to constantly repeat through the course of your entire career and help you think through things where there really are no answers. Because when there are answers, you get assignments, they're very short, and they're like treasure hunts, you find the answer and you're done. Where lawyers live is in these areas of uncertainty where you learn to, one, advise clients in the face of an uncertain outcome, and two, advocate in ways to make outcomes more likely, that you think are more beneficial for your client or for society more likely. That's quite interesting. So that's, based on how we're doing it, that's the likely outcome at this point. But I hope that all of you will find that at least engaging enough to be something you'd seriously consider doing this, or a belief that I think that the tools you learn in terms of analyzing the technology is really quite robust. Okay, what does this really mean? What it really means is we will send a call for applications out right before spring break. And the deadline is designed to be sort of a week and a half, the Monday after the full week after spring break. And so the intention is that if you have free time on your spring break and want to devote it to the application process, you can do so. If you have plans for spring break and don't want to be doing this during that time, you will have a full week afterwards to do that. The application process consists of basically a statement of interest, why you're interested in it, how that goes, and then we'll give you an assignment that's not unlike what you will do as an editor. We'll give you an article and ask you to evaluate it and say, if you were the person who was editing this, what comments would you give to the editor, to the author to make it better? We will get your transcript and look at your overall law school performance. A major factor to me is demonstrated interest in technology law, because that's what we do. Student organization participation, and to me, we do require either before as an elective in your first year or during your second year while you're a member, that you actually take a class in technology law taught by one of the core faculty, because frankly, if you're not doing that, I don't understand why you're taking the journal, because naturally, this is usually a pretty easy ask, because people will do that. It's tougher. Electives in the first year, you have 2 of them, but when you have the whole curriculum open in your second year, I mean, then if you're not taking at least one of these classes, then you're probably a bad fit for the journal anyway. So I think that's great. That's how that all works. With that, I will turn, and just to give you pretty pictures, these are journal staffs. The current journal staff is in the upper right corner right now. We took that, a week ago? 2 weeks ago? The example in the middle is one of the social events. They went to the Harry Potter exhibit a couple years ago at the Franklin as one of the things, different things people have done. And I just think it's just a really nice environment. This gives you a flavor for the kind of community we build. All right. With that, I will hand things over to Jack and Sophie.
Can we borrow that from you?
Of course. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jack.
Hi, I'm Sophie.
Happy to see you while you're putting on your mic.
Can everyone hear okay?
Yeah. So we're both co-EICs of the journal this year, and this is pretty informal. There's no planned remarks, but I kind of wanted to give a few comments about my experience in the journal and my experience in law school in general. I think I got a little afraid when I saw, this is the technology law journal, and I'm probably about as far away from a scientific background as possible. My background is in classical music. I play French horn, and I have a master's and undergraduate degree in French horn performance. So from a technical scientific background, I know very little. But I think the key here is interest in technology. And I had that. And my interest, yes, mostly lean on the copyright side of things. But to me, having just that interest in technology, obviously it's an IP course and Professor U's Internet Law course, that was enough. And it's really, the two journal experiences opened up a lot of doors to me. Currently, I'm actually externing with the US Copyright Office, and it's given me a lot of background scientific and background technological experience that I can bring into other areas of law that I'm more familiar with. So basically, my summary is don't feel dissuaded or dispersuaded if you don't have that technological background. The journal is open to all, as long as there's some interest in technology law, something adjacent, and if you're interested in robotics, if that is the topic next year, definitely apply. That's kind of my 2 cents here. So.
Yeah, I second everything that Jack has said. I do have a STEM background. I studied biology, but I will say that biology is very different from artificial intelligence. While you can use AI in biology, that's not what my background was, and it's been very interesting to learn about that this year and to learn about antitrust law last year. I will say in terms of some of the technicalities of being on the journal, it's a great way to get credits doing something that's not, like Professor Yu said, doctrinal old state Supreme Court cases, and this is probably the most current area of law, especially next year doing robotics and machine learning. It's a really great way to meet other students with like-minded interests, which is probably the most valuable thing that I think you can take from being in law school is the network you create, because while you might understand the subject really well, you might decide to bounce around places after law school. So it's really great to know people in the field. And Professor, you mentioned briefly the social aspect of it. Outside of editing, we plan social events like happy hours, dinner activities, and we could do museum stuff. Although this year people weren't really interested in the museum idea, so we're sticking with the food because everyone likes a good free food meal. But outside of that, you're going to hear from some of our associate editors who also have really diverse backgrounds and are also involved in other journals and other activities with law school, which is something that is very compatible with being on JLI.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go on this point too. we understand time commitments and we understand that law school is like extremely busy, especially if you are on another journal. Maybe it's a lot of a load to take, but we're always open to students who say they're too busy. Fortunately, we have a large staff, so we can shift things around. So you should definitely not feel like, oh, I can't do this journal because I'm so busy. I think there's definitely, it's a fair time obligation, I would say. And another thing I also wanted to touch upon is, this is a faculty-led journal, and I think that's a very, very unique point to this journal. In most of your 1L classes, you're sitting in a classroom of 60 to 40 kids. And I think it's really hard to kind of get a close relationship to professors. And this journal, this is now my third year, and this is my third year taking a class with Professor Yu. Throughout this process, I've gotten much closer to Professor Yu, and also many other of the professors on CTIC in general. There's the happy hour in the fall. A lot of the CTIC professors come to that. Professor Parchamovsky, I think Professor Polk has come. Professor Wagner has come before. But there's plenty of opportunities to get closer to professors throughout the journal experience. And that's really important, especially if you're thinking about clerkship opportunities, you need letter of recommendations, if you're thinking about going into academia or scholarship, it's a really, really useful resource to have.
All right. So we're going to hear now from 3 staff members, but before, as part of this, we're going to hear from 3 in this order. We're going to hear from Amrutha, then we're going to hear from Jesse, and then Holly. But there's one thing we have to do first. Today is Amrutha's birthday. And so we have something, it's coming in, some cakes to celebrate. But while we're waiting for her to come in, would you please join me in singing Amrutha Happy Birthday? All right? 1, 2, Jack, you're the musician, you lead us. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amrutha. Happy birthday to you. Well, we're going to make her sing for her cupcake, so we'll make her talk first, and we won't interrupt things now, but please come down and grab her cupcake as you go to sing. Or we can maybe pass it. I don't know what the right thing to do is. What do you think, Jack? Let's see.
I think we can just kind of pass them around.
We'll pass them around. Anyway, at the risk of distracting everybody, Amrutha, would you share with us about how JLI, what the role JLI has been in your law school experience, how it's made it better, and what you would say to one out who's thinking about applying?
Hi, oh, that's a loud microphone. Okay, so yes, it's my birthday today, and I volunteered to be here. I was not forced to because I absolutely love this journal. And I think that much has already been said about sort of the social components of it. I do feel like I found some really amazing mentors on JLI, and it almost feels like an affinity group, but for people interested in the IP, tech, innovation space, which is awesome. So I've been able to ask, like Sophie, for example, I asked her about clerkships, that process, stuff that maybe you don't feel comfortable asking other people, but we've developed that closer mentor relationship. But on the other hand, I've had some real material benefits to being on JLI. One, I think it's a great procedural thing that we do, that if you apply early to JLI, you get to find out whether or not you're in the journal before you go through big law recruiting in the summer. Not to make everything about jobs, but that is why we're here. And it got brought up in almost every single one of my interviews. And it really demonstrated my commitment to this area of law. So I think it served me really well. And where I'm going to be practicing law, I'm going to get to do IP litigation, which is awesome. Second, we, a few times throughout that seminar class, we have to write a shorter paper, and we get to pick the topics that we're interested in. Every week is a different, I guess, cross-section of the larger theme of that year. And so one of my papers was about how healthcare interacts with AI. My background's in biochem. And this isn't like a super high-stakes paper in that no one outside of the class is going to look at it, but I ended up submitting it as a writing sample for a research application. And I ended up getting the position, and it's with a professor through the public health school at the Perelman Medical School. So it's super exciting because now I have this research opportunity in the healthcare space this spring. My background's in biochem, and all of that came from this AI seminar that had that 1 week dedicated to healthcare. So I had gotten a few writing samples out of that class as well. And I also love the fact that this seminar, it was just a really cool class in general, apart from the journal. It allowed you to deep dive into different topics within the broader theme every single week. And the discussion was really focused around policy, what we thought was a good policy choice, because again, everything in this field is so new. A lot of the law is not necessarily super set in stone yet, so it just feels like an exciting topic to talk about.
Push the button in the front. There.
Okay, I'm just going to use this one. I am also on the journal, and I have really enjoyed it so far. And I'm also on another student-run journal, and I will say the amount of credits we get and the workload for this is manageable. So if you want to do two, you definitely can. And I've never felt like this journal is overwhelming me. And having it as a class in the fall, I really enjoyed that because I feel like I got to know more of the faculty. I hadn't taken a class with Professor Yu before, and so it was really great to get to know him more. But then you also get to know the other students that are on the journal much better, because I feel like with a lot of other journals, you're just sending edits back and forth, and so you don't really get to know people as well. But sitting in class every week, you really do get to know other people, and you get to know people who are really interested in similar things as you. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And then I feel like I have a lot of the same things as Martha, but I feel like having like a space, especially with the upper class people as well, because I also was talking to Sophie and Jack about like the clerkship process, and I asked Sophie for her patent outline because I couldn't find one anywhere else. And so I think just having that opportunity to connect with people who are interested in the same things as you and who are going to take a lot of the same classes, and so it's really easy to get advice that way as well.
Holly.
Okay, can you, oh, yep, awesome. Hello, I'm Holly, I'm a 2L, I'm also on the journal this year. So like my 1L year, I don't think any of my professors knew my name. I was like, how do I even speak to a professor? It was so weird. There's like 80 people in the class. I went to like a small liberal arts school. It was completely different. So I really wanted an opportunity in law school to connect more with professors at Penn and also like practitioners in the field. We just recently had our JLI symposium, which was like a full day event. And it was extremely well attended. We had a networking reception after. I got to connect with, people actually practicing. And, I think I found some really cool mentors from that. So that kind of, opportunity, I think, is something that might not be shared by a lot of journals and is kind of a unique experience to JLI. The work-life balance of JLI, it's definitely not lip service. When I was looking for a journal, I still wanted to be able to do the criminal defense clinic. I knew that was important to me. I wanted to be able to do moot court, all these other things. And being on the journal, I don't have to say no to any of those opportunities. It's an extremely manageable amount of work. The deadlines are really clear. And I think if you have any sort of like hiccups in your life, they're also incredibly, sensitive to that and, how to allocate distribution of work. I also had no tech background, so don't let the application scare you. I know it seems quite serious. I had only taken privacy with Professor Yu last spring, and I thought, wow, I should really try to become more tech literate, so I think I can, better serve my clients when, I actually graduate and start practicing. And I think I definitely have gotten that out of this journal. I know a lot of things I did not know last year, like how the cloud works, what is an AI algorithm, right? So this kind of base knowledge in a field that is constantly developing has been really exciting and a really fun experience. Like Professor Yu alluded to, it's not stagnant Supreme Court cases. I think you're really able to look into like what the future of law is and how people think it should be shaped. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. After just reflecting on what you said, one, I don't have a tech background. I was a social studies major, and that's the class you stopped taking when you were in the 7th grade, right? You know, so I mean, the answer is if you're interested and you get engaged in this stuff, I think it's wonderful. Second, from a pure practice development standpoint, it's huge. I think there's a huge opportunity right now, which is what I would say is, I graduated from law school. I'm going to really out myself out. It's even worse than you think because I had 6 years in between. I graduated in '95, and this is right when the internet was starting. I mean, that's the major milestones are the first browser was created in '93. HTML, the language that drives the web, was created in '94. So 95 to 96 is when the internet's volume was growing 10 times a year. And that was the big spike. None of the old law partners had any idea what to do. So a lot of my peers ended up being internet lawyers, where step one was actually requesting web addresses, and no one else knew how to touch it, and doing trademark searches and all this, and developed entire greenfield careers when no one else was working. And in fact, I think that's where we are with AI right now. And to some extent, if you were asking me about 10 years ago, I think with state privacy law, you can start to see these things, they come in waves, and so they're wide open to you. And I'm really struck, the last thing I'd say is, I'm really struck by something that Rufus said, which is, there are a lot of interesting paths about, there's stuff you know. We can help with course selection, we can help with outlines, clerkship advising, but things like internships, they're harder to find. And finding other people who have the same interests with you and finding out, just brain dumping from them, what did you do? What did you do? Just creates ideas, about things I never thought of doing that in a way that I think is what makes this community special. Is that you will actually find the other people who are interested in the different things. Some people are more interested more in one direction than the other, but the whole community is actually very supportive, and I think it's great for that's the main presentation. I'm going to actually out Sophie and Jack, because here are their email addresses, so if you want to talk to them. But then I want to open up to questions. Anyone have any questions about? Go for it. Yeah. Please go.
Well, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that journals are usually better for people who are interested in litigation. Now, as a person who's exclusively interested in transactional and hates anything to do with litigation, how could I fit into that, or how could I benefit from it?
Are any of you transactional lawyers? All right. So the answer, I actually believe it is false that journals are better for people with litigation, because it's really about scholarship on issues. And that can be about a litigation-oriented topic or not. Okay. So what do I think journals are for? The number one issue, those of you who don't know me, I went to business school before I went to law school. And business students are trained to be much, much more directive and forceful about your job search than law students ever are. I mean, we're trained to sort of line up like cattle and go to OCI and bid and sort of go to the best firm that takes you. Certainly, when I was there, I went to UCLA, top 10 law school, business school at the time. Margin kicks in and out now. Certainly the tech industry, 80% of my friends in the tech industry didn't get jobs through on-campus recruiting. So we learned to go get our jobs, be very, very proactive. The number one thing you need to do is to signal interest in a subject matter. And interestingly, one of the things I think that you do with your electives in your second semester here, you'll learn stuff, but it's more important to signal what you're really interested in to the employers. You want to know how they take me? You have 7 levers. Statement of purpose on your resume, course selection, prior work experience, internships during the semester, summer experience, major writing, and clubs, student organizations. And those are the things, and the best ones are pulling the same lever in all 7 directions. That's how you get synergy. If you're at the top of your class, you don't need to worry about this. You can be doing a little bit of this and that. But I've had students who, basically, even if they were struggling a little bit academically, by creating a cohesive resume where the whole was greater than some of the parts, that's how you do it. And to me, I used to see students who didn't have electives and didn't have these sorts of things. In the summer, I'd say, what do you know about international law? It's like, well, I've never taken a class on it, but it looks really interesting. Doesn't get it done. If you've taken the classes in the space and signed up for a journal, when you're interviewing in June, you have a signaling capability to potential employers. It goes far beyond anything. And what I would say in the journal experience, you actually have a lot of latitude to craft your own adventures. So for example, what thing I know you guys did this year is you circulated the abstracts of the different papers that we were, first, the subject matter of the journal will cover all different things. I mean, when I did space law, there were several classes to purely transactional things, and one of the things I loved about it is every major space company except Starlink went bankrupt. And so we said, how do you do that? You know, it's a really weird thing. What do you do with a bankrupt satellite? Second is, they circulated the abstracts of the different papers to all the members and said, what are you interested in working on? So there's a great deal of latitude to match interests. And I would not say that they're predominantly litigation oriented. The funny thing that I also think this opens up is, there's a whole bunch of lawyers who are what I think of as regulatory lawyers. And when I was in law school, no one told me this field existed. When I was at Hogan in DC, it was a third of the firm. And I think personally, you get to be the expert for a change, because in litigation and transactions you don't. You have stable clients. You have, frankly, more regular work hours, because you have stable clients instead of, here's a deal, here's a case, and then you go crazy, and then it settles, and then and I've done my share of that too. But I actually really like the role of knowing a subject matter really, really well, and having expertise that I can actually bank on for the rest of my career. And so what I would encourage you to think is, like, in addition to the transaction litigation divide, there's a whole bunch of interesting roles that are like counseling roles, advising roles, policy-oriented roles, which I think are incredibly rewarding and are often overlooked. Long answer. Yeah, please.
So from what I recall, there are 2 board members with like expertise or like backgrounds in life science, and I also come from like a biology background. So I was wondering, like, within the journal, how did you balance like the intersection between like health law and tech, or like life science and tech, and like did you have any experiences or like topics that you really like?
That's a good question. Well, first, each issue has its own theme. So this issue is artificial intelligence governance. That being said, there are articles within each issue that are just completely different. We have one right now on criminal and evidentiary law and AI. We have one on FDA regulatory related things. So if I was a student who was interested in the health sciences, I would probably select that as my top choice article to work on. But even just outside of journal, I think that there are lots of opportunities to kind of find this cross-cutting area of law. Like, for example, last year I did the IP clinic, and one of my clients was like entirely health law, AI product focused. So there are other opportunities outside of just the scholarly journal opportunities. I don't know, Jack, if you have any thoughts.
Well, and I'm, like, speaking to the seminar, I believe it's like 3 small response papers you make that are like about 5 pages, and it doesn't have to necessarily be exactly on the topic that is presented that week. It can be related. And so if you find something health law adjacent, and especially if next year's topic is robotics, tentatively, there's tons of things and content that could be related to that. So you have the opportunity to write that small response paper on that, and that response paper can be turned into a student comment submission. Like, there is a lot of latitude about what you can do with your interests, as long as there's kind of that underlying theme there, which would be whatever the journal topic would be.
Sure, I want to add on the student comment. I don't think we brought this up, but last year's board started an opportunity for JLI students to write a comment. So if there is something that is vaguely related to the overarching theme, we encourage students to submit a proposal, and this year we selected one, but in future years they could select more than one. And that's a great opportunity to really delve into one really niche area, as long as it aligns with the general theme. But AI, there's something in pretty much every sector, so that's another opportunity.
Before I bow to Jess, I move the Holly into that.
And I'll also mention that each week has a different subtopic, but when you're writing your response paper, it's called, like, you present like a tangent talk as well, and it's very much a tangent, as in if there's something small that you're interested in and it can tie back to a couple of the papers, but you also want to do outside research and make it your own thesis in a really specific area that you're interested in, that's also something you can do. So you have so much, I guess, writing and creative control over that.
I'll also say the symposium was really interesting for me because we had a bunch of different areas of kind of related to AI in the law. And so having those professors come and just like talk about their experience and then answer questions related to it was really, I think, useful for me.
So I'm not going to, I was trying to edit this into something I wasn't going to show, I'm going to show you really quickly, but what they're getting at is, okay, if you want to look at the topics that we covered, and just to give, next year will be different, but just to give as a model. So the first topics we talked about was AI basics, which was how technical foundation, how predictive analytics work, what the basic regulatory regime is in the US, and then a bunch of general issues, intellectual property, privacy, bias, and standards. And then we did a deeper dive into autonomous vehicles, healthcare, criminal law, and then we wrapped it. That was the topics we covered. And so what Amrit is talking about is if you're looking at, for example, AI basics, you could do a healthcare kick on that, or an autonomous vehicles kick. If you deal with privacy, if you deal with bias, all these issues are going to show up. And if you have a particular interest in healthcare, it's actually very easy to channel. You do the healthcare one, that's the easy part. But there's enough latitude in almost all the other general topics that it becomes pretty easy for you to tackle. Second thing is the comment that we are really too siloed in the way we study things. And what we discovered is the things that the people who were involved in the conference enjoyed so much is they're used to talking to other healthcare people. But the healthcare person got a lot of ideas from the way we're thinking about AI in criminal law and the way we think about it in autonomous vehicles. And we get outside of our little niche and start being pulled in different ways. And someone would say, I never thought of that. And that kind of stuff has a different aspect to it, which I think is really positive. And that it can, I know the stuff that the people I talk to all the time know. What do I don't know that they know? And that's the beautiful thing about it. All right? Questions? Please.
Do you guys ever collaborate with outside Penn and other grad programs? Like you said, you're going to do robotics. Like we're going to do something with GRASP, whether it's have someone come speak or tour their labs to see their robots or stuff like that.
I love this idea. We have never collaborated with undergrads before, but with something like robotics, you meant here. You know about GRASP.
I work there.
Okay, yeah. GRASP is a great lab. And the thing that I love about it is the soccer tournament. So, what robotics really means is you program something to respond to the world and then you cut it loose. And every time they have these little bots running around playing soccer, and there'll be one bot that's stuck in the corner because someone programmed it wrong to respond to stimuli and it doesn't know how to get out. And it's fascinating to me. It's how do you deal with that? You anticipate the whole world. Well, you can't do that. And so what I would probably do is put a certain amount of randomness in, to get yourself on. I mean, there's all these strategies you learn, but one of the fascinating things to me is it's also based on feedback. And there's a very distinctive set of behaviors that things do when you're in a loop feedback loop. And that's something that we generally don't think about, but it actually has it has profound implications. And the number of things we do on feedback, whether it's the internet or AI, is enormous. And it's just fascinating to me that people there are about 2 or 3 theorems that are top of mind that come out of this literature that show these are characteristic flaws of feedback loops that really have not influenced the way we think about technology policy the way that I think. That is a fundamental flaw that is something I think you can deliver real value to your clients by explaining. Probably more of an answer than you want. But yeah, especially if you're part of the journal, we will definitely do something with GRASP. We should go there. And if you've never been there, the first digital computer ever made at Penn and in the world is at Penn. And we should go there too. All right? Any other questions? All right, I'm going to wrap it here. If you have further questions, you can see me now or later. Jack and Sophie's email addresses were on there, and I'll get it back up. But in addition, there's a JLI website. And there is also, Caroline Olson is the managing director, so if you do anything with CTIC, you'll get to know her. Her contact information is there as well. I encourage you to reach out to us. I assume Jess and Ruth and Holly, they can reach out to you as well. And thank you for coming. I hope to see your applications in March.